Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. Monday morning started with a bombshell. I'm leaving you, James. I want a divorce. Katie delivered the news casually, as if she were commenting on the weather. I was halfway through my coffee, flipping through the sports section, when she dropped those words. I didn't react as expected, no shouting, no arguing. Instead, I calmly turned the page. Is that all? She wasn't prepared for that response. I'm serious, James, she snapped, slamming her hand on the table. I set the newspaper down and met her gaze. Katie, you haven't been much of a wife for over a year. If you want to go, just go. I'm not stopping you. With that, I stood up, took my coffee, and walked to my home office, not sparing her another glance. Let me clarify, this wasn't a revelation. I had suspected for over a year that Katie was seeing someone else. Her late nights, the sudden secrecy, the distant attitude, it was all too obvious. I chose to ignore it, not out of ignorance, but because dealing with it felt like more trouble than it was worth. But this morning felt different. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them, rehearsed, calculated. She thought she was in control. She was wrong. I walked back to the kitchen, pulled a notebook from the drawer, and scribbled a note. Thank you, God. She is leaving me. Then an idea struck. I took a lottery ticket from my wallet, slipped it into an envelope with the note, and addressed it to her affair partner, Tyrone. When I handed it to her, Katie frowned. What's this? Give it to him, I said. Or better yet, maybe I should deliver it myself. I trust you won't open it, right? Her face turned red as she snatched it from my hand. You think you're so clever. Not clever, just done. I took another sip of coffee. Now, why don't you pack your bags and get out of my house? Of course, she refused, claiming it was her house too. I laughed at that. Instead of arguing, I refilled my thermal mug and left for work. But first, I made a stop at the bank. By lunchtime, Katie's financial safety net had vanished. I emptied our joint accounts, opened new ones in my name, canceled all our credit cards, and changed the locks on our safe. She had nothing but her paycheck to rely on, and I doubted Tyrone would be eager to bankroll her fresh start. That evening, I stayed late at work, grabbed dinner and drinks with my executive assistant, Maria, and enjoyed a conversation about life, work, and the sudden realization that I was back on the market. Maria smirked. Well, if your ex's sister doesn't work out, I'm putting myself on the list. When I finally returned home, Katie was still there, but she kept her distance. Fine by me. She thought she had blindsided me with the divorce announcement. What she didn't know was that I had been waiting for this moment. The next morning, I moved even faster. At the bank, I shut down every shared financial tie. The teller raised an eyebrow. Big plans. You could say that, I replied with a smirk as he transferred every dollar into my new accounts. Next, I hit the safe deposit box, taking everything of value, cash, important documents, even a few sentimental keepsakes. I left behind meaningless paperwork, just in case she decided to check later. With our accounts wiped clean and assets secured, I called a locksmith to schedule a full lock change. It was expensive, but worth it. Katie wanted a battle? I was making sure I held every advantage. By the time I arrived at work, everything was under control. Maria noticed something was off but didn't pry. She just made sure my day ran smoothly. When I left the office, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. When I got home, Katie sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork. Maybe she thought I'd plead for our marriage, beg her to stay. Instead, I poured a drink, glanced at her mess, and said, I hope you've got a backup plan because your cards won't work tomorrow. She looked up, confusion flashing across her face, then anger. What are you talking about? You'll figure it out. I took my drink and headed upstairs to the master bedroom. She thought this was the start of her new life. What she didn't realize was that she had already lost. The next day, I took control of the narrative. I called my lawyer, Alex, an old friend who knew exactly how to handle situations like this. James, Alex said after hearing everything, if she files first, She controls the story. If you file first, you set the terms. He was right. I wasn't about to let Katie dictate how this ended. We scheduled a meeting to begin drafting the paperwork. Alex even suggested a restraining order to temporarily keep her out of the house. Sounded like a great idea. By mid-morning, the wheels were already in motion. I was confident, but Katie still had no idea what was coming. That was about to change. At 10 a.m., I got a text from Alex. Paper is ready. Want her served at work? I barely hesitated before replying. Absolutely. Look, I know it sounds harsh, but after everything she put me through, the lies, the cheating, the audacity to demand a divorce on her terms, I felt no obligation to play nice. If she wanted to make this public, I was more than happy to oblige. Later that day, I got the call. She was served, Alex confirmed, right in front of her coworkers. I could almost picture her face, the shock, the humiliation as the facade she'd so carefully crafted shattered in front of an audience. For years, Katie had played the role of the perfect wife, and in one swift move, I had exposed her for what she really was. That evening, I braced myself for the inevitable. Sure enough, she called not long after she got home. "How dare you humiliate me like that?" she screamed. I leaned back in my chair. "Humiliate you? Katie, I think you did a pretty good job of that yourself when you decided to cheat on me for over a year and a half." She sputtered, trying to argue, but I cut her off. "Look, your things are in the garage. I changed the locks. If there's something you need that isn't there, make a list. I'll get it for you. Other than that, I suggest you find somewhere else to live." I hung up before she could respond. I had no interest in hearing whatever excuse or sob story she had prepared. The rest of the night was quiet. I poured myself a drink, sat on the couch, and let the weight of the day sink in. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my life again. Katie had thought she could dictate the terms of this divorce, but now the game had shifted. This was my story now, and I was going to make damn sure I told it on my terms. The first sign that Katie had taken things too far came when I pulled into the driveway one evening and saw the garage door wide open. That was odd. I knew I had closed it when I left, and she no longer had access to the house. Cautiously, I parked, stepped inside, and immediately felt my stomach tighten. The kitchen was a disaster zone. Broken plates and glasses littered the floor. Drawers had been yanked out and dumped. It looked like a tornado had hit. My heart pounded not with fear, but with rage. This wasn't just an emotional outburst. It was intentional. In the living room, the destruction continued. A couple of lamps lay smashed, bookshelves were cleared, their contents scattered everywhere. And then, upstairs, I found the worst of it. All my clothes, suits, shirts, even my favorite jacket, were piled on the bedroom floor, soaked in a stench I recognized immediately. She had urinated on them. Katie had gone full-blown malicious. She wanted to make a statement, and she had. Fortunately, I had been prepared for something like this. After filing for the restraining order, I had installed security cameras. Everything, her breaking in through the garage, the destruction, and of course the disgusting act in my bedroom, was caught on tape. I called Alex immediately. She broke in, trashed the house, and she went nuclear. "Don't touch anything," he said. "I'll get the police involved." An hour later, 2 officers arrived. They surveyed the mess, taking photos and notes. When I showed them the security footage, one officer shook his head. "Some people just don't know when to stop." The next day, Katie was arrested at work. Alex called me. She's been booked for violating the restraining order and destruction of property. They took her mugshot and fingerprints before sending her before a judge. I won't lie, knowing she had been humiliated like that brought me a deep sense of satisfaction. She had spent years making me feel like a fool. Now the tables had turned. The hearing was set for Monday. Over the weekend, Alex and I prepared everything. When the day came, the judge reviewed the evidence, including the security footage, and didn't hold back. The restraining order was made permanent. Katie was ordered to pay for all damages, replace everything she had destroyed, and cover the cost of professional cleaning. To twist the knife just a little more, I hired the most expensive cleaning company I could find. She complied barely, but at least now, legally, she was barred from coming anywhere near me or my house. In the end, her little tantrum had backfired spectacularly. She wanted to make my life miserable, but all she had done was strengthen my case and give me another win. Katie was unraveling, and I was just getting started. With the restraining order in place and my home truly mine again, I could finally breathe. I had spent so much time playing defense that I had almost forgotten what it was like to focus on myself. Now, I had the chance to start over, and Maria was more than ready to help me do that. That weekend, Maria and I went out for dinner and dancing. She was warm, funny, easy to talk to. Everything Katie had stopped being long ago. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely appreciated by someone. And this time, it wasn't just a date. For the first time in a long while, life felt like it was truly mine again. After dinner, Maria and I found a quiet corner at the bar, the warmth of the evening settling around us. She leaned in slightly, her eyes curious. "So," she asked, a playful smirk on her lips, "how does it feel to finally be free?" I let out a laugh, shaking my head, like I just finished a marathon. Exhausted, but damn, the finish line feels good. Maria smiled, and for the first time in years, I let myself relax. This wasn't about rushing into something new. It was about finally letting go of the past and enjoying the present. Saturday, we met for brunch at a small cafe she loved. Over coffee and pancakes, we talked, her childhood, my plans for the future, even a little about the mess Katie had left behind. With Maria, conversations felt effortless. She had a way of making things lighter, peeling away years of weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Sunday, we packed a picnic basket and headed to the park. The sun was warm, the breeze just right, and for the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. But even as I moved forward, Katie still lurked in the shadows. She tried calling multiple times, likely hoping to drag me back into her chaos. I ignored every attempt. The restraining order was clear, and I had no interest in letting her derail my progress. By Monday, something had shifted. I was no longer just surviving, I was rebuilding. Piece by piece, I was reclaiming my life. Maria was just the beginning. Months passed. The legal battles were behind me. The restraining order had done its job, and Katie had become nothing more than a closed chapter. My life was finally my own again. Maria and I were growing closer, but we weren't rushing anything. I was still technically a recently divorced man, and we both knew that starting fresh meant doing it right. Then, one ordinary afternoon, my past came knocking in the most unexpected way. I was sitting at a Hilton bar during a business trip, enjoying a quiet lunch, roast beef sandwich, cold beer, when someone slid into the seat beside me. "Mind if I buy you a drink?" I looked up. Took me a second to place him, but when I did, my stomach tightened. Tyrone, the man Katie had cheated on me with. I froze for a beat, debating whether to tell him to go to hell, but curiosity won out. I nodded. "Sure." He ordered 2 beers. For a moment, we sat in silence. Then he exhaled and started peeling the label off his bottle, his voice low. "I didn't mean to screw up your life." I raised an eyebrow. Funny way of showing it. He sighed. "When I met her, she wasn't wearing a ring. She acted single, completely unattached. I had no idea she was married until a mutual friend told me." His jaw tensed. Even then, I didn't want to believe it. I was in love with her. I leaned back, arms crossed. Not exactly an apology, but I let him continue. "She told me all these lies about you," he admitted. "Said you were abusive, a drunk. Even claimed you'd threaten to kill her if she left. I believed her, until I started seeing the cracks." He gave a hollow laugh. "Didn't take long to figure out she was lying about everything." "Yeah," I said dryly. "She's got a talent for that." He nodded. "After the divorce, she started pushing for marriage. That's when I walked. Once a cheater, always a cheater, right?" Then he reached into his pocket and slid something across the bar. "This is yours." I glanced down. Cashier's check. A significant amount. "What the hell is this?" I asked. "The lottery ticket you put in that envelope." Tyrone leaned back. It was a winner. I waited until your divorce was finalized so she wouldn't get a dime. I stared at him, stunned. Why? He shrugged. Because you earned it. He met my gaze. She lied to both of us. And I think we both paid for it in our own way. With that, he drained the rest of his beer, gave me a nod, and walked out of my life for good. I sat there for a long time staring at the check. It wasn't about the money. It was about closure. About finally winning a battle I hadn't even realized I was still fighting. When I got home, Maria took one look at me and smiled. You look like you just got some really good news. I held up the check and grinned. Let's just say I can finally close the book on the past. Because it was over. I hadn't just survived Katie's betrayal. I had won. And now it was time to focus on the future. My future. With Maria. And whatever came next. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.